A lost wedding ring shone under the grimy beam of a street lamp, glinting an unearthly blue on the damp cobblestones. Lucas stumbled upon it as he wiped the rain-slicked sweat from his brow, leaning heavily against a derelict building marked by peeling gray paint and the ghosts of graffiti past. The ring seemed out of place in Grimholt District, a neighborhood notorious for its shadowy corners and the whispers of deals done in the dark. Luca Angelari considered himself a ghost in his own right. Unassuming, with a faded baseball cap perpetually shading his eyes, he kept his head down, working double shifts at Don Elio's deli. His life was a routine of slicing prosciutto and stacking shelves with non-perishables that barely kept Grimholt's denizens afloat. He was slight, with nimble fingers calloused by work, and a mind that quietly ticked with the rhythm of the mundane. Raindrops pattered insistently on his canvas jacket, a familiar cadence that played a melancholic tune through his solitude. The ring was heavy in his hand, a solid fragment of someone else's story. His instincts, honed by years of avoiding trouble, screamed at him to let it be. Yet there was an indescribable pull, like he was clasping not just metal, but something deeply charged with meaning. His heart quickened as he read the inscription inside. Amore per sempre, love forever. It was a promise sealed in gold, worn with age, yet somehow untouched by time. He imagined a breathless bride, eyes glimmering with joy, exchanging vows beneath a sky as tumultuous and promising as their future. This piece was not merely lost, it was set adrift, untethered from a story. But life in Grimholt was not one for fairy tales. Here, even dreams carried a dangerous edge. Luca hesitated, then pocketed the ring. No more than an hour later, trouble found him, not in whispers but in bootsteps as he closed up shop for the night. Eyes sharp and threatening, the familiar form of Vincent Gallo appeared. A brutish figure, admired for his cold efficiency and a telltale scar that ran the length of his jawline. His presence always promised complication. "Found something of yours, Angelari?" Vincent drawled, a sneer curling across his lips. The scent of cheap cologne mixed with Italian spices filled the cramped alleyway between the deli and the looming tenement. "Nothing but old debts and shadowed days," Luca answered lightly. His laughter seemed to float like smoke, thin and insubstantial in the tense air. Vincent's eyes narrowed, heard about a ring. Luca's heart dropped. How quickly the vultures circled. He shrugged, a small motion meant to dispel the man's hawk-like gaze. Just a trinket left in the rain. Could be anyone's. Or belonging to someone who doesn't appreciate strangers handling their affairs, Vincent said, his tone sharp enough to carve stone. Claustrophobic pressure welled around Luca's chest. The intersection of fate and folly spun through his mind like a roulette wheel set in motion by fear. He clutched onto his final words with a semblance of bravado. "I wouldn't recognize wealth or wicked, Vincent, not amongst us saints." Yet Luca knew better, even saints had their shadows. Vincent chuckled, a mockery of amusement. "Don't mistake luck for mercy, Luca. We'll be in touch." Days passed like insignificant drops in the ocean of Luca's anxiety. The ring was a weight in his pocket, a silent companion that whispered possibilities and peril alike. Even in sleep it called to him, unsettling dreams with fragments of laughter and a voice promising of forever. In the cramped space he called home, the ring seemed to hold its own gravity, a separate world of gold and forgotten promises. Debating whether to pawn it, he instead found invested curiosity leading him to the town library, spending lunch breaks squinting against dusty records of lost and found. Then he found her, Gabriella Rossi. The name flickered on yellowed paper like an apparition, brought forward by Luca's obsession. Years ago, she disappeared among the echoes of Grimholt's criminal underbelly, her wedding feast left untouched, rumors of betrayal and sin like ashes in the aftermath. Her photo revealed stunning, clear eyes, a map of hope etched within the lines of a singular dimple. Every trail, every piece he turned over seemed to lead back to Gabriella and her ill-fated union with Lorenzo, a man drenched in whispers of power and quiet cruelty. Luca paused, fingers tracing the gold band one evening. Could this ring be the phantom holding the tremors of an unsolved mystery? Its return the key to unraveling a tapestry of love, deceit, and vengeance that had entangled all who dared touch its edge? His contemplation left him staring at his reflection in the rain-rippled windows, questions mirroring in the glass. And then the shadows deepened. A whisper in the night brought a different promise to his door, a chance encounter with old rivals, equally intrigued by the resurging whispers of past scandals tied to the ring. In the stillness of the night, he heard a voice drift through the cracks of his resolve, carried along with the echoes of the past. Some stories aren't meant to be found, it warned softly. But when the knock came at midnight, heavy and foreboding, Luca knew some tales demanded an ending. The last knock resonated differently, and when Luca opened the door, the dim hallway seemed to pulse with life. "I know why you kept the ring," the silhouette said, stepping from darkness into the dim light of revelation. The glow of the neon sign flickered ominously, reflecting off the addict's eyes, a ghostly green that danced over his hollowed cheeks. Luca had never seen despair light up so brightly, and irony he could taste like copper. It was the evening after the mysterious knock. The air was sticky with humidity, clinging to Luca's skin like a restless curse. He had spent the day puzzling over the visitor and old adversary turned ally, or so they claimed, with eyes keen like a hawk. "Don't squander what you found," they had urged, but left his questions unanswered, vanishing into the rain-soaked shadows of Grimholt. Luca's mind drifted as he carefully wrapped sandwiches at the deli, each slice of salami laid with precision. He painted a picture of himself in his mind's eye, just another man in the cheerless lineup of life's routine, yet today burdened with a tale too tangled for simple unraveling. Paula, the elderly woman who lived 2 floors above him, shuffled past, her cough rattling thin walls more accustomed to the murmurs of secrets. Her presence was a comfort, a mundane sanctuary in his existence of half-knowing. Vincent returned, entering the dimly lit deli one sultry evening. He approached Luca with the deliberate grace of a predator, eyes set like flint. "I think it's time we had a heart-to-heart. Don't you?" he mused, each word dripping with honeyed menace as his gaze fell on the knife in Luca's hand. Luca placed the knife down, fingers skimming the cool steel, conscious of the weight of its intentions. This room, smelling of meats and stale bread, suddenly felt electric. The ring in his pocket was a mirror to Vincent's unveiled threat. "Perhaps you're sentimental," Vincent continued, leaning too close, his whisper a diseased wind brushing against Luca's ear. "But sentiment doesn't solve problems, does it?" Luca kept his hand steady, though a tremor danced beneath his composure. "Just heard a story that caught my interest." "Nothing more," he said coolly, the rhythm of bread cutting, steadying his own heartbeat. Their eyes locked, silence swelling in the tiny space. Then Vincent laughed, a guttural sound that crackled abusively against the walls. "You're full of stories, aren't you, Luca? Keep collecting them. They might just be worth something." As if fate played hand in hand with the universe's jest, a news article clipped from an antiquated publication suddenly appeared on his stoop that night. It spoke of Elio, a forgotten kingpin whose fall from grace echoed like thunder, Gabriella's father. Once notorious, now nothing more than a footnote in Grimholt's telltale history. Stumbling through records, Luca grasped at threads of Elio's clandestine empire, now ghost-like and dissolved in time's relentless river. He imagined Gabriella's eyes then, pleading for understanding, glittering with undeciphered messages. Armed with half-truths and burning questions, Luca followed tales of gold-laced promises past, tumbling headlong into confusion amid deceit's tangled skin. Flickers of the past, worn photographs, and erroneous declarations melding into a tapestry only his mind dared to unravel in pursuit of truth. Then, standing on the brink of revelation, Luca found traces of Gabriella's last whispers, buried beneath layers of forgotten voices. A sister, a confidant whose loyalty, once pure, had severed as her world shaded darker, dimming Gabriella's crystalline dreams. With dawn rolling across the skyline intent on hope, Luca faced its beginnings with a resolve solidified by dreams and mistakes yet undone. Every grain of truth he gathered held the promise of redemption for a story too poignant to stay untold. A call shook Luca from his contemplations. Paula, a voice both frail and fierce, warning of shadows lengthening and intentions masked in smiles easily assumed. Backed into a corner between loyalty and love-lost rumors, Luca found within himself a new stranger, courageous, fearful, determined. The ring, its meaning multiplied, rendered him a reluctant key-bearer to a kingdom unheard. Then the shadow shifted. Vincent reappeared with an entourage of ill intent. "Your hand in all's undeniable now," he accused with fervor, gesturing to the ring, its story not required in speech. But Luca didn't flinch. The gunmetal gray of dawn shimmered across his eyes like a revelation. "I don't chase dreams anymore, or nightmares either," he admitted, brandishing nothing but his Truthoe banner against blades drawn new. In that quiet, charged breath between tension and decision, the alley sang with echoes of resolve, Luca's unfolding story claiming its own space against deceit's sharpest edges. As Vincent and his men drew weapons from the abyssal depths of their coat pockets, a chill descended. But Luca's heart felt a warmth unknown. The tale belonged to him now, and he wasn't about to abandon its telling. Then, where fear morphed to action, he heard Ed, a sharp metallic note carried with whispers of past injustices as it fell on unforgiving stone. "Let's play, then," Vincent taunted, his voice layered with intent begging recklessness. The final image lingered, a lone light extinguishing as dawn's pale embrace crept slowly, like redemption or ruin, across the alleys of Grimholt. The sound of shattering glass pierced the night, an ominous symphony echoing through the alleys of Grimholt. As jagged shards scattered across the Duladen ground, Luca's breath caught, warning cloaked in chaos. He stood in the narrow back end of the deli where the clatter had come from, surrounded by the smell of curing meats and aged cheeses layering the air like ghosts of history. The memory of old arguments, muffled and bitter, seemed etched into the walls like a permanent specter. The glass lay strewn amidst shadows, a reminder of how fragile boundaries could be. Luca and Jelleret, unlikely protagonists who had stepped into the brisk edges of a Mafia enigma, considered the mess, pondering the twist his life had taken. He was a man of routine, preferring the predictable hum of machinery over the erratic pulse of mystery. He absently adjusted the collar of his jacket, worn and frayed from nights battling the sharp bite of Grimholt's winds. A relic in its own right, it offered some comfort layers of fabric that knew his story almost as intimately as he did. Each morning since the discovery, Luca walked to work with renewed focus, vigilance pressing needlessly on his narrow shoulders. Despite tensions tugging at the seams of his life, he clung to the details, rumblings from distant memories, interwoven with folklore that had Darwin-like evolution in Grimholt's aftermath of partings. Mr. Safety, the deli's cashier, Louisa, would teasingly call him as he checked the store. With sharp eyes softened by concern and caramel hair tied loosely, she moved with effortless grace around the stacked towers of imports. "You spend too much time tinkering," she would joke, yet understanding lingered in her gaze, soothing as balm. As Luca swept glass fragments into a dustpan, whispers of betrayal swirled within, voicing caution but also intrigue. It was a day in late autumn, the air crisp, kissed by subtle frost promising ephemeral beauty. Hours passed, marked by the pendulum of the clock, while Luca and Louisa worked among deliveries and stock-taking duties characteristic of Grimholt's unforgiving commerce. Luca heard the door jiggle. A presence entered the Delia calm amid an inward storm. He looked up. A constant thorn, Vincent Gallo mused upon finding Luca in the yellow-becleaned aisle, his gait slow, surveying empty shelves with conspiratorial interest. Luca kept his expression measured, sensing the invitation of adversity looming like dark clouds heavy with rain. Here was a man who personified danger's allure, a face etched with menace that time could not erase. "Happens to the best," Luca replied, an inherent nonchalance in his voice as he focused on arranging products. Vincent's shadow expanded, tiptoeing into Luca's peripheral vision, eyes glinting with amusement, or perhaps calculation, a man conflicted by charity and cruelty, the likes of which only Grimholt knew best. "Do you ever think about what you are holding?" Vincent's words shifted like loose bricks, one edge revealing hope, the other suspicion. Luca hesitated, wondering if the question required an answer or merely acknowledgement. "All the time," he lied smoothly. It's hard not to consider potential. Vincent chuckled, a deceptive charm echoing. You know stories have a way of twisting how life can turn on words. Luca remained silent, letting the unease settle into the conversation untouched. Pressure bore down as Vincent left and stranger now so familiar, it was difficult to imagine a future untangled from his web-like gaze. Later, an encrypted letter slipped anonymously under his door promised more answers. Luca deciphered it, fingers working deftly. A legacy inherited, perhaps unasked for, driving his path. The words guided him toward hidden archives where shadows themselves dared not stir. He embarked on another fruitless journey amidst papers suffocating with information, tattered photographs revealing cracks in Grimholt's proud facade. Swiftly rising challenges followed, hidden paths shrouded in illicit allure. A clandestine exchange overheard between two whispering legends, Elio's voice threatened by time but unforgotten. Clutching clues buried beneath inquiries of influence, Luca traced frail correspondences backward, unpicking locks. Each semantics-driven turn in the text exposed potential allies, now adversaries. Worldlings shifting into place like an ever-changing puzzle board. Attempting to borrow truth from myth, Luca ventured deeper. Edges of artifice, beautiful fabrications sewing the city's dark corners, emerged while whispers meld into an unwilling trinity of truth, tales, and tender illusions. Then, amidst dust hardened by neglect, the Riviera photograph, creased yet cherished, halting his quest. There in sepia tones rose her form Gabriella, radiating vitality long captured within memory's dubious grace. With heightened senses, he saw the motif repeated, a shimmer of reflection on velvet scarlet, a tribute commemorating love wronged as betrayal bore its fangs. Even as shadows deepened beyond the periphery, Luca's purpose crystallized. Gabriella's essence transcended incarnations beyond lace and laughter, nostalgia binding them. In a flurry of motion, compelled by primal thirst for both clarity and solidarity, Luca raced toward the fate Grimholt demurred to reveal, descending skirting alleys steeped in echoes dissent dared to deny. The night alive with possibilities egging him through obtuse gestures only the heart comprehends, a city charged with forgotten dreams, gathering upon whispering winds. And Luca embraced courage, a scar stitched through dim streets, called to the turbulence of emotional volta where realization reframed endearing doubt. Amongst persistence, an alleyway unveiled new mysteries where the hidden truths had always lain in wait. Shall we dance? A voice murmured through the dark, an invitation cloaked in velvet terminus gauged upon thresholds beyond the cusp of understanding. The ring slipped from Luca's fingers, bouncing off the cobblestone with a decisive clink that reverberated through the narrow street. The sound, a solitary note against the grim silence, was enough to jolt him into a heightened awareness of the alley's embracing darkness. Luca Angileri drew in a breath, the cool night air slicing through his lungs like a frigid blade. Beneath the sheared moonlight, Grimholt was a city of stark contrasts, where shadows veiled secrets as tenacious as ghosts. He stood at the cusp of a story unspooling, threads of wonder and dread entwining yet refusing to disentangle. Disillusionment remained his constant companion, cradled in the rough textures of everyday monotony. Yet curiosity simmered beneath, an undeterred ember in the hearth of his mind. The ring's sudden escape jarred him back, its silent narrative urged pursuit beyond banal horizons. A relic not of love, but entrapment. Angileri pushed thoughts of caution aside, stooping to reclaim the now dusty emblem from the sodden earth. His days were tethered to Grimholt's merciless Beata rhythm of gritty perseverance and unspoken nightmares anchored by loyalty to Don Elio. The deli, stifling in its stasis, echoed with the scent of oregano and whispers of clandestine deals, masked in banter served with fresh salami. Luca navigated entrenched paths with stealth likened to fading echoes, honing unassuming discretion, honed from living apt to slide under radars designed for larger prey. His present day was punctuated by humdrum routines, slower than apprehending a glance yet seasoned with synonyms for family, fidelity, and the dubious comfort of the same faces each passing roll of dissatisfaction. The deli's sharp chill greeted him next, with smells of flour-dusted bread blending with unsolved exchanges hunched under their weight in the shadows. Luisa's warmth served as a fragile reprieve, all smiles and unsaid worries, as she leaned over counters bearing the burdens of daily customs. "You seem far away," she murmured over teaser roasts, timber gold beneath the knife in the steadiness of her control. He replied with silence, as if sharing moments like currency earned felt foolish, even absurd here among relics of fates intertwined, yet stricken with loss's permanent mark. Into this habitual dance steps Vincent, arrogance in tow, trailing intent. His presence at the deli punctuated each encounter cautiously, pausing time amongst spice shelves where even fragrances seemed to hold their breath. "You've heard the story," Vincent began, words cool as currents coursing subterranean tunnels. "But there's layers you've yet to peel back." Salt's sharpness merged with tension. Luca's poised autonomy countered the predatory gleam in his shadow's piercing eye. There laid frameworks unable to bend, a perpetual spar between choice and compulsion. Hours trailed under Clutter's chatter till night bore familiar boldness. The ring's siren call unexpectedly demanding return, unforeseen leverage emerging between wholesale unpredictability. Amongst the rubble, he discovered texts hidden beneath contexts urging truths unraveled. Surprises lay couched in paradox, even as transcripts produced eerie fidelity alongside cliched vows rewritten into deception. The stakes metamorphosed, secretive allegiances spiraled, like serpents writhing beneath surface veneers obscuring transparency. Near truths whispered in the twilight's cloak, breath heavy with anticipation's broth. Relicity circled through Luca's veins. His clarity, accented by familiarity, pulsed in tune to prospects born anew in baptismal rains. A slip, walk through metamorphosis, ushered Luca toward finality. Through paths harbored under autumn-blackened boughs, the puzzle's evolution favored resolution, tempting justice cast adrift. Jeers of ruthlessness echoed. Its metallic taste mirrored the intersection of scheme converging, contrary to Vincent's nested intentions. "Shall we make a wager?" the specter of conflict proposed, relished in the chill of judgment declared. An act of defiance bloomed under height of question and lunar artistry overhead. "It's not gambling when you know yourself victorious," Luca dared announced. Defiance sharpened resolve coloring nuances, hypnotized under shared midnight's dance. And beyond insinuations shadow danced, bringing story's refrain closer to stages, curtains close. As Who Cast Doubt's gaze lingered longer, the rogue wildcard bore mysterious plumage. Spectators lined pews of tangled nighttime touted lines blurred between comprehension and astonishment newly forged. Once deceived, misled, but here funneling toward intention's crested arm of unlocking crisis ticking inexorably warmer with each affirmative echo cast wide. Until another solitary clink resounded, a curious whisper coaxing further overture yet unveiled. "Maybe you're not the lead this time," Vincent's words ghosted the melded boundary shared only in passing. There, in tangential proximity, lay opportunity, a boundary woven not of boldness, nor acceptance, nor invitation, but providence beckoning, stories we've completed before closing, as scripts await their cue. And so Luca stood ready, heedful against Grimholt's eternally blanketed night, skis a sepulchral whisper from one story woven amongst infinity, well beyond a simple broken ring. Why was there blood on the roses? The question slithered into Veronica Pellegrino's mind, pulling her abruptly from the haze of sleep to a reality vivid with crimson and the wail of sirens piercing through the veil of her dreams. She blinked rapidly, pulling the duvet closer around her shoulders, as if its warmth could insulate against the electric chill now suffusing the room. The morning light filtered weakly through the half-drawn curtains, casting the motel room in a palette of muted grays. And there on the dresser sat the bouquet. A dozen roses, rich and red as a promise, tipped with droplets like rubies that seemed to grow from the very pores of the petals. It was a detail burned into her consciousness that would not let go. Veronica, once the darling of Francine's bakery before the scandal, now found herself dissecting crimes not sweet pastries. With auburn curls barely tamed and a habit of wandered thoughts, she'd made a quixotic career turn into consulting psychology, helping solve mysteries, the regular policing methods couldn't quite unravel. Though petite, with an impish face that belied her firm resolve, Veronica was underestimated only once. By anyone. She gathered information surreptitiously like others did flavors, cautiously layered, creating something more potent underneath. Outside, rain began its rhythmic murmur against the window. Suitably gray for the news the street vendors muttered. 2 nights prior, the brutal aftermath of an altercation at the edge of town near Walter Street had left shadows darker than the clouds hovering above Grimholt. Veronica adjusted herself in the nest of tangled sheets, the ring resting heavy around her neck, a constant reminder of promises evanescent as breath upon glass. It had belonged to her mother, a relic of happier times spent chasing dreams through cobbled streets under a brilliant sky, the only bond she retained from a family splintered by fate. The journey from the past to this now, heavy burden of memories lay paved with investigations which interjected snatches of her childhood home, soft echoes of a father who vanished under history's unkind glare. Even as Luca's unraveling narrative tempted her curiosity, so did it whisper danger. The old tales came living through frenetic sketches on weathered parchment, tales her father wove into bedtime lullabies, once scaffoldings of comfort now darkened by truth. Earlier yesterday, the call had come as rain began its solemn descent. A request from his voice, heavy with esoteric weight, laden with silent urgency matched only by shadows cast long past midnight. "Meet me under the old oak at dusk," read the terse message tapped out on her screen, delivered by a number not recognized, echoes of secrecy threading his plea. As dusk approached, a fog settled in, blurring the edges of her world into surreal softness. Veronica paced the floor, her thoughts intersecting the rhythm of her shoes against the polished wood. Questions burned beneath her skin as she prepped for the meat-sensible shoes. Lap coat concealing intentions opaque, and a mind sharpened by recent days' bruises gathering. The oak by the river was ancient, its boughs folding out across time as a mother's arms embrace, bark carved with initials and hearts, which had long outlasted their makers. Veronica arrived early, ears tuned for whispers against the evening's still-evolving score. Her contact emerged from the mist quietly, a shadowy outline resolving into the familiar figure of Luca Angelari. His face, drawn tight with fatigue, wore the lines of someone choosing the lesser of two evils. Shaded craters beneath his eyes deepened by self-imposed isolation. Luca paused, the ring glinting from within loose fingers more torch than trinket illuminating paths unknown. His silhouette merged with the twilight as he spoke, voice quiet as the river's lapping hush. "Do the roses smell like iron?" he asked, words too soft but resounding with implications that pinned the sky to its course. Their meeting was brief, an exchange indulgent as it was necessary, seconds stretched impossibly long, a resume written across stolen glances, and the echoed assurance of solitude shared in spheres normally meant private. When the first patrol lights shattered the dusk, Luca vanished back into the woods, a phantom retracing steps over ground already consecrated by deeds meant to stay forgotten. The roses in her room had arrived as if to mock, a reminder of burgeoning threats correlated by midnight calls and the renewed tenacity of her role within overlapping tales of power insistent on entrapment rather than emancipation. Yet, in that very moment, an unsettling understanding bloomed within her. The roses, dripping in dusk's washed-out light, forecast something more in omen threaded not merely of crimson, but betrayal cradled within trust. Questions fickled across her mind. A kaleidoscope of images lodging in grievances lodged timeless. Was Luca truly an ally? Pieces shifted, motives distorted. Veronica returned to the motel, her heart a riot of percussion echoing sonorously within the stillness, surrounding as the image of roses lingered, tethered to mysteries cradling the past with a silence as thick as the river fog. Perhaps, she mused aloud, voice hushed against chance's whims, the stories we tell are just mirrors holding our truths hostage. Still enveloped in the velvet of that morning's dawn, thoughts crested and tempered each step purpose, guided beyond blurred road. Recollections, time carved unwilling. Through breaking sunbeams, the visage hardened with the refuse of yesterday's dreams, the petals warning bruised covers never reveal anew. And somehow the truth clawed at its shroud, vulnerable beneath the necessity of disbelief awakening. Before the petals dried, before the motives shifted anew, before recollections collapsed back into histories undisclosed, Veronica's steely composure to confront echoed loud, unsaid promises, all rationality frayed thin. And as morning matured into afternoon's demanding embrace, the roses endured, dewed in resolve and unwavering despite impermanence's effect. It took only a whisper, laden with context memory tangibly defied, to rejoin every splinter crumbling under thoughts engaged in elusive catharsis, as Luca emerged from her thoughts ink-caught and resolved. And with him, the same shiver coiled around faith in reflections transposed against a backdrop awaiting stars yet dawning, determined beyond coincidence, unresolved. Then Jared appeared, bringing with him overcast tension braided in control, tender, into whispers against afternoon endings. His entry cut through with intent, profound, scent of his cologne marking an arrogant entry, words baritone but sing-song. You might want to hear what came out last night. Veronica's heart paused, story ready for its cinched beginning amidst shades of disbelief dawning light. She watched him, internalizing each motion, past proving whisper light behind those eyes, yet inescapably crowned with forthright urgency bleeding. Jared flicked his wrist, an unknowing herald pretending what might come next. Did you know about the roses? He queried, leaving questions ribboned across improvised boundary versed into the unpredicted dialogue of today's meeting. Casting shadows, suspicions passed like prayers upon winds brisk with ambivalence, until silence rebounded, palms open and drawn tight around mysteries unresolved, truths awaiting patience's sweet burn. Her response lay deliberately vague, saving guard over fragments yet to be unveiled. Maybe we should follow the blood this time. Prodding truths met with secrecy, each note igniting across domino, fallen scenes framed within. The implications resided contained within descending conclusions, phantom edges of dance night wrapped eager as turned facades amidst anticipation untempered. Night holds more than you guess, Veronica murmured, leaving just a whisper of the power contained within, and no sign whether the roses or their bloody dew woke as offering, omens woven into waking resurrections of past fate. And with that final phrase, a suspenseful charge remained, an obscure detail resisting definition. Look closer. Could be the petals or mirrors. Luca gazed in awe at the renowned Verdi Palace, a structure of gilded splendor standing tall against the encroaching night. Inside its marbled corridors lay opulence that only whispered to common folk, coupled with the sterile scent of polished floors and curtains, swathing shadows like liquid gold. He stood before it, unassuming in his attire jeans and a tattered leather jacket that seemed more memory than garment. As he crossed the threshold, the crisp night air heavy with impending rain trailed behind him. Luca, a flicker in the city's sprawling tapestry, played a critical role untouched by the sheen of wealth that cloaked the halls of those who mattered most. Luca Angeleri, ever the guardian of secrets amidst the mundane, moved towards the room at the behest of Don Elio's reluctant consent. His sleeves bore scent of lingering mortar, an echoing resolve, a companion more steadfast than any ally. Internet whispers had been unkind voices, like cosmic static drifting with tales of the lost ring. Its notoriety, a fulcrum on which the mysteries of crime families pivoted, laid buried within Luca's grasp. He was far from the polished figures swirling around in evening coats, each all too aware of their importance in this mosaic of power. Yet Luca maneuvered among them with practiced ease, a specter capable of deftly untangling the knot of their intentions. Veronica's call had arrived before dawn, urgency threading her words like a wire of cold steel. It comes down to tonight, Luca, she'd warned, her message echoing off long-faded dreams. The truth is within reach or ruin. This is yours to decide. Against the backdrop of opulent chaos, Luca knew betrayal was the silent guest tonight, his discussions aimed at allies hidden among the titled tables, woven into wit that played as sport, games poised between fortune and falling traps. As his night deepened, so too did scrutiny's gaze. The Del Rose family's emblema rose with thorns upon scarlet velvet, stood out in the hall, a fixture as omnipresent as the tension it heralded. Every smile exchanged sharp enough to draw blood, concealed behind masks of civility. Within this environment of veiled threats, Luca felt the weight of expectations coil around him. Irony's Paldi, the quiet servant to Grimholt's culinary life, stood at the cusp of their ambitions. His confrontation with Vincent was inevitable. The engagement danced as shadows in the gallery, where Picasso's portraits scrutinized the evolving tableau with silent judgment. Their presence no longer a question of allegiance, but of dominance sought by maneuvering pieces in a game timeless as the building itself. Collusion makes strange allies, Vincent observed, his voice an operatic aria against the architecture. You welcomed me here, Luca retorted lightly. A place seemingly so prosperous, your creed flounders. Vincent chuckled, the same predatory affability ever present. What's a ring but forged metal? Or perhaps you aim higher the Del Rose's mystique. Their words danced in circles, intrigue layered so thick the air felt static-laden. Verona laid a gentle hand on Luca's arm, familiarity twisted by their current lane fate. Her eyes, often teasing, were somber pools rippling with apprehension. Everything is illusion until broken, she whispered, her breath shallow. Despite seething undercurrents, Luca maintained his aridity, each step measured against time's scope until even the walls audibly leaned closer. He found the study surprisingly vacant. The paintings on wall glowered imperiously. A solitary chandelier flickered overhead, defiantly staving off twilight's encroachment. Candlelit realm guarding truths hung precariously like stars above. The ring lay in his palm, a lighthouse guiding him through the pained expressions of perpetual betrayal. Yet now its familiar weight felt elusive, growing separate from its initial tale. Gabriella's face formed in his mind, a visage powerful with devotion, yet etched with the betrayal now tinted with context deviously revealed. Vincent burst into the room, his presence overwhelming, the very air whispering its tension amid the wall's freshly spotlighted tapestries. You still think this holds us, Luca? Vincent muttered, eyes alive with bottomless resolve, and something more in intensity beyond sheer hunger. Luca perched the ring onto the edge of his knuckles, palm outstretched while answering in voices steady within belief. Circumstance is both blessing, curse, yet something altogether involving. Luca responded, his words dilated under layers as fathomable as gossamer webs hidden among charades. Tell me, does every page read predictably to you, or is there more unfinished you're willing to barter? In that tranquil moment where choices intersect with destiny, the ring succumbed to candor. In necessity, the room dimmed as if part of an unseen ritual drawing its conclusion into perplexed sighs. Gaslight peeked through the window glazed with dew. Remnants beaconed across Veronica's uncertainty, joining the disjointed pacing of aspirations. An opera of our own, just listen, he said, aware his melody played beyond orchestral reach. The descent into clashing senses, sights stolen across echoing timelines, and fulfilled promises, of love exacted in flawed hearts and allegiance faded unfinished. Vincent peered quizzically at the ring momentarily trusted to time's grace, choices weighing heavier than eloquence ever uttered. Outside, the wind shifted anew, carrying whispers as soft as falling leaves cascading toward a thorned destiny, wrapped in stories long past their expiration. Each figure in the hall harmonized with the pressing crescendo, culmination wandering beyond measure where truth burrowed an abandoned throne. Look not where you distrust, Veronica interjected softly, conviction bracing flags held staunchly. Her expression calculative, the air oscillated. Then as sudden a flash, fractures spidered across glass of the mezzanine below, reverberating discord resisting brief given charge. That resounding passage struck as blood-inked effigy of impending narrative rewriting itself anew. Amidst consequence, that was when his resolve splintered destiny's echo without pause, forging story from grievance edited by illusions interpreted past one initial clink. And in that suspended frame of orchestral fever, Lucas shifted the paradigm not simply by happenstance, but with an intent beyond an exclamation point, engraved mistrust mingling with history undone. The closing curtain, Victoria mirrored, eyes intent upon universal implication, bristling beyond when shadows marched. The tension settled, breaking chains and tides deepened, without need to gripping edges consistently. Their harmonizing metered beats balmy against silence, broken anew, leaving room reserved within ending's final phrase. On that conclusion stage, echoes rippled transcendently through their unified understanding, finer and stronger upon yielding touch. Did you think the roses only bled dry? The query lingered, a nuanced beat beneath imagined conclusions, solidifying witness to experiences, cascading inward toward depths explored anew. The moonlight was thick as a stolen kiss, casting long shadows onto the cobblestones of Grimholt like ink spilled across a blank page. Luca Angelari stood silently in the alley, its oppressive silence broken only by the echo of distant sirens and urban symphony that drummed a haunting cadence into the night. Against the silhouette of looming buildings, Luca seemed an improbable sentinel, his presence as subtle and undemanding as a whisper in a storm. He watched, his heart pounding to the unsparing rhythm of the city around him, each beat accentuated by the weight of the ring lying heavy in his pocket. Years of living behind the deli counter had honed Luca's instincts to the rough edge of caution, but now his very being thrummed with a different kind of urgency, one that called not for slicing meats or dusting shelves, but for confronting demons entwined in the city's shadows. His fingertips, roughened by mundane labors, traced the fading contours of a dream once thought unreachable. He turned, blending into the swirl of anonymous night, moving with a fluid preservation born from necessity. Regulars at the deli knew him only by a nod and smile, just another face who served fresh mozzarella. But here, in the night, Luca became more than he allowed himself to be. The courtyard ahead sprawled open like a begrimed stage with tendrils of moonlight entangling stakes of half-forgotten memories. Crumbled masonry bore witness to whispered secrets and hushed deals, both long past and present. The scent of damp earth mingled with the bitter tang of age-old betrayal, lingering in the air like a phantom. The rusted gate creaked under his touch, a breath that trembled through the expanse, as if the city itself offered a reluctant bow. He passed beneath the crooked archway, a step forward into the intricate labyrinth of stories etched into the very stone, buried like roots that tangled and knotted around time itself. Luca's gaze fell upon the remnants of a fountain in the courtyard's center, its water dried long ago under the weight of countless dreams deferred. He paused, for therein the cracked basin lined with gremile, a fading photograph. Its edges curled, its surface marred by time, yet the image was unmistakable. Gabriella. The shock of recognition was a lightning strike in his mind, illuminating possibilities that trembled on the precipice of his soul. He knelt and retrieved the photograph, the slight tremble of his hand betraying the calm facade he habitually wore. Her eyes seemed to reach into his own, alive with the promise of amore per sempre, forever love indeed, a vow trapped on the other side of mortality's veil. The connection felt vital, like a strand of starlight pulling him across time and space. But the quiet moment shattered as footsteps approached, heavy and filled with purpose, a cadence both rhythmic and threatening. Luca recoiled slightly, his heart quickening even as he forced his breath to remain steady. Vincent Gallo emerged from the shadows with a pair of men flanking his sides. Their expressions were cut like stone, eyes tracing over Luca with the precision of hawks. Vincent's presence was as insidious as a storm cloud rolling across a once clear sky, bringing with it the promise of destruction. Chasing ghosts now, Angelari? Vincent's voice slithered through the air, mocking and amused. A habit I didn't think suited you. Luca straightened, but kept the photograph behind his back, meeting Vincent's gaze without flinching. Though the urge to run, to vanish like mist under a scorching sun, pulsed through every vein in his body. Ghosts or shadows, we all chase something, Luca replied, the words a soft gust against the hardened edge of Vincent's demeanor. What do you seek tonight? Vincent chuckled, a sound that reverberated through the stone courtyard with an unsettling echo. Information, maybe. Secrets yours, to be exact. The air thickened, wrapping around Luca like a noose, tightening with each of Vincent's measured steps forward. His fingers instinctively curled around the photograph, the paper crinkling in protest. You've always been a bit too curious for your own good, Vincent continued, eyes gleaming with the predatory glow of a cat toying with its prey. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed. Luca's mind whirled, weighing possibilities, searching for the angle that might turn the confrontation to his advantage. Amidst the rising tension, He felt the ring press urgently against his thigh, a silent reminder of the power and danger bestowed simply by possessing it. Maybe some stories need telling, Luca countered, each word chosen carefully, like steps along a precipice's edge, even if they weren't originally mine. Vincent stopped, surprise mingling with calculation in his gaze. The courtyard seemed to lean in, listening. A storyteller, eh? Vincent remarked, his tone almost congenial but for the steel lurking beneath. Then perhaps you'll appreciate the tales that end in blood. With a flick of his wrist, one of Vincent's men produced a knife, its blade glinting ominously in the moon's cold gaze, promise of violence etched within its sheen. The tension cracked like ice underfoot, fragile yet endlessly terrifying. A heartbeat passed, torn between action and helplessness, a rabbit in the looming jaws of a predator. But Luca, though not fierce, carried a wisdom born of patience. He exhaled slowly, artistry woven through determination, decision. Gabriella believed in chances, he said, speaking even as his mind raced, nearly faltering over the perilous uncertainty filtering through the night. The name hung between them like a specter conjured from mist, causing Vincent's eyes to narrow. The courtyard seemed to darken, harmonizing with the accelerating pulse of fate. You speak of phantoms, Vincent hissed, anger cutting through his measured front, of unfinished chapters and stones better left unturned. Luca's gaze remained steady, embracing the shifting ground, daring implicit dangers inherent in truths rehashed and shadows invoked from obscurity. Vincent nodded, the gesture subtle yet weighted by a sudden understanding, a deal struck inaudibly within their shared silence. Then let's paint this night red, Luca, Vincent murmured, a fierce gleam returning to his eyes, laced with both menace and a conflicted respect. Let us see how your story weaves among the threads of reality, yet revealed. The words lingered, a benevolent curse entwined with hope, violence, and a promise shadowed. Just then, a sharp sound resonated from somewhere beyond the courtyard, slight yet striking, like a pivot shifting in the soul's deepest chamber. Luca's heart surged with sudden clarity, drawing breath from the abyss. In the thickening mystery of Grimsholt's night, the air buzzed with anticipation, a symphony waiting for the next note to unfold, to unravel a tale of destinies riding on the point of a knife, in a single whispered truth. Good stories always find their way home. The ring was gone, vanished from his pocket like an elusive specter. Luca's breath caught, the once familiar sensation of cool metal now absent, leaving only an unsettling void. Dust draped the alleyways in hues of violet and steel, and with it came a sense of unease that tightened its grip around him. Rain had swept through Grimholt earlier, a cleansing tide turned to vapor in the heat that lingered beneath street lamps. The air, dense with electricity and expectation, enveloped Luca as he paused under the flickering glow of a burnt-out neon sign. He was nondescript, a man overlooked by the city's urgency. Until now, a labyrinth of cobblestones lay beneath his feet, each step an echo of stories untold, and Luca moved silently amongst the whispers of a city that had barely acknowledged his existence. Yet his heart drummed a steady rhythm, a beat tuned to the cadence of change. From childhood, people rarely noticed Luca, not beyond the familiarity of pleasantries exchanged over deli counters. Shadows were his refuge, places where spirits of past mistakes mingled with hopes of redemption. His quiet resilience spoke volumes even when words deserted him. A knock on the door the previous morning had done little to prepare him for the cascade of decisions that followed. It had seemed inconspicuous enough, a gentle tapping that tugged him from sleep's oblivion into the realm of consequence. "We need to talk," the mysterious visitor had urged, their identity obscured by the half-light of dawn. "There's an urgency you must understand." Those words, seemingly mundane, had propelled Luca into a narrative that demanded action. Now, beneath the sullen gaze of a city unwilling to reveal its hand easily, Luca found himself a protagonist swept up in escalating currents. The ring, a relic or talisman, conduit of signs unrepented, had guided his path. It was the axis of a tale that pulled characters into orbit, forced to confront the gravity of revelations long hushed. Luca, dressed plainly in a faded blue shirt and jeans, felt the eyes of the city upon him, but what lingered over him now was absence, as palpable as the drizzle beginning to fall once more. His journey had led him here, to the brink of an abyss laden with danger. Vincent would surely come, catalyzed by avarice and history binding them tighter than truth or lies could unravel. Luca sensed the inevitability of conflict, the coil of tension wound tight enough to sing. Tendrils of mist coiled and twisted amid the lamplit streets, a ballet of elements that both shielded and exposed him. He felt the weight of the city's breath, the rhythm of the night constricting like a serpent's embrace. Steps resonated behind him, hesitant yet deliberate, and Luca spun instinctively. Beneath a canopy of rain-soaked branches, a figure emerged. Her silhouette painted against the twilight, Veronica crossed the nexus between light and shadow, with the fluidity of one born to navigate dualities. She paused, strands of auburn hair clinging to porcelain skin, and her eyes reflected the muted glow of the world around them. "I came to find something," she said softly, her voice unwavering amidst the cascading echoes of droplets kissing stone. Her presence was an unexpected solace, a thread of constancy amidst unraveling. He offered her a nod, acknowledgement that promises made would no longer remain secret. Pressure loomed as the air thickened with reminiscence, a hint at what lay ahead. Past ordeals, paths worn by feet driven by desperation and desire, rose within their shared silence. "This city remembers," Veronica spoke again, her gaze steady, both observer and participant in a story deeper than the split cobblestones. "But memory's fragile, is that what brought you here?" Luca exhaled slowly, remnants of yesterday's burdens clinging tight. "We're all pulled by that which remains unspoken," he confided, energy contained within his words. "History tells me my place isn't one of ease." As if on cue, a distant clang of metal against metal resonated through the night. It unsettled the stillness, a signal unspoken that stirred chains lying dormant. "We have choices, even when absent," Veronica countered, the steel of truth entwined with her own vulnerability. Their exchange, layered with implications, intertwined their fates beyond mortal direction. Threads bound by intent, secrets woven into tangible forms, whispering impressions between each breath. The flash of lightning split the sky, and illuminating the darkness, momentarily revealing the intricate web weaving through their lives, a shared destiny discovered through peril and hope, renewed. And across the courtyard, Vincent emerged from obscurity once more, flanked by figures cloaked in anonymity's comfort. His stride was deliberate, each step a testament to ambition and power claimed. An impulse surged within Luca, tethered to intentions required through exchanges explicit in foregone conclusions. Threads quivered between hands, steadying truths still masked, delicate as the poised gesture defining broken equilibrium. "Still running errands, Luca? Or have you found a new calling?" Vincent drawled, the words charmingly edged as daggers. Luca met the gaze, firm yet introspective. "Some things chase you, whether you're running or standing still," he replied, the words layered with sincerity and resolve. The scene set, tension ignited by silent agreement, the escalation promised a performance imminent in delivery. Veronica, standing alongside Luca, whispered assurances intertwining with the spectral heartbeats, weaving chords through atmosphere, steeped in revelations, waiting. "It all comes full circle in the end," she breathed, offering strength through the shared moment. The preamble to Collision played out in cinematic synchronization, a kinesis of anticipation vibrating against every nerve. "The world collapsed in on itself," was a phrase whispered into the annals of conspiracy, a line once dismissed but now claiming a chilling truth. Luca found himself repeating the mantra, then discarding it just as quickly as dampness seeped into his bones. Imagination twisted these words into a kaleidoscope of possibilities, each more unnerving than the last. Luca, previously an obscured reflection in Grimholt's distorted mirror, now walked with the resolve of someone touched by revelation. His clothes were as humble as ever, but there was a spark in his gait, the suggestion of something resilient. Finding one's place in Grimholt took attention, resignation, and sometimes a willful forgetting of grandeur. Luca was adept at fading into the inconspicuous, a ghost of practical labor in the rough textile of the city, but tonight the weight of destiny wore him like an overused cloak. Conflicted scribbles decorated the pages of his consciousness, notebook marking every interaction, Each threat, every unnoticed sentiment, and the ink of those mental annotations was pooling into something inkier, something vast. Yet his hands, raw from years of labor, were an undeniable testament to his perseverance. Luca's true challenge came when silence crept into the interstices of the night, whispering cruel reminders that the net of danger was tightening around him. It was here that courage was most required, in these moments of haunting quiet. Confrontation found him under the halo of desolate street lamps, those guardians of shadow and revelation. Tentative steps gave way to surety, and Luca, imperceptibly transformed from underdog to something more formidable, carried the fight within, unyielding and poised for the reckoning. The pressure of unseen forces, that pervasive, indefinable presence, grew to its full insidious potential. They were close, bearing intentions that left an imprint not just on his skin, but piercing foundational certainties. Vincent's shadow loomed in the alleyways, a specter orchestrating judicial-like calculus with a dedication to avarice. Cornered by resignation and necessity, Luca accepted the equalizing force of the elements, their play of light and dark at the intersection of fear and fervor. Fear had become a companion, a alter ego, met with a courteous bow as now the unmet assumptions matured into clandestine truths. In this crucible, when corners absolved anonymity of context, something shifted a pull that redirected energy toward revelations in the palpable, tinged with an invincible longing Luca hadn't realized he possessed. It was a tether that connected him to the unseen tapestry flowing around him, with veins of tradition, legacy, and resolution weaving intermingled strands. Yet tangibility bore unexpected pain, a reminder of intentions shaped by spurs of the past and the unrealized possibilities they unveiled. Against these iron gates, defenses bolstered, Luca's nimble mind emerged as the arbiter, moving among discordant sounds of lives lived too softly to be solidified. Realization came wrapped in the scent of concrete moss, awakened by humid era signature to his life's ongoing confrontation. Here, where the city held lucidity hostage, Luca found counterpoints of what was to become a harmonic convergence bearing tenderness beneath complex rivalries often concealed by sharper edges. Girding himself for what was yet to come, the anticipation that hummed through Grimholt found form in Veronica, her silhouette a still quietude beyond strife's clutch. Her arrival wasn't simply a reinforcement of Alliance's integrity, but added dimension to its evolving fortitude. Together they shared an unspoken communion, recognition profound in the roles within Destiny's impending orchestration, delineating where paths might intersect. Every sound blended seamlessly, the rustle of footsteps, the melody of human pulse, and the whispered prayer to all they've yet to understand or process. When Vincent reigned over their intersection, the atmosphere shifted like the earth beneath ocean tides, a terrible beauty in its predictability. He engaged with distinct authority, poised in a dance distinct as Headstone's signature between identity's claimants. Vincent's gaze met Luca's, a steel camaraderie formed in a crucible of shared antagonism, tether grown familiar yet suspenseful, contour meeting context within which stories were reborn. "You underestimate what silence can breed," Luca said quietly, the declaration standing stark against Vincent's assumptions, redefining negotiations about to unfurl. In the outskirts of the cityscape's persistent gloom, a truth matured, a phenomenon bound neither by submission nor credence, reaching into the intangible for solidity, and consequently their fates, already entwined, were further woven into Destiny's lineage. Facades began to melt beneath intentions of earth-laden resilience, where empathy and defiance sported eager disguises birthed by necessity. Events escalated amidst the halls adorned with crowdsourced laughter, echoing beneath corridors echoing legacy-sheathed convictions. From pockets, Vincent produced a token of revelation. Small book, its leather-bound spine resonating with the crux of history's unexamined. What's inside became a question not of authority, but of consent attest. Words, Vincent offered, are but agreements binding time. His statement carried weight between incursions rehearsed, impossibilities novel. When the book fell open under constraints unshackling, eyes roamed the handwritten evidence it cradled, revealing stories shared yet unfamiliar. Luca absorbed their meaning until each directive, each encounter's conclusion, rewove existing understandings. Knowledge imbibed of past betrayals arrived tainted with warmth. Stern balance of both fiction and unfettered truth, weaving realities bound in metaphors' evocative power. Amidst rain-mingled alleys, realization deepened, unguarded thresholds that murmured like broken caress aglow with hesitation rematerialized. Choices intertwined, though intentions unraveled through lucid gauze, witnessing fidelity meld with unwanted purpose. In silence, but not desolation, veil would close over implicit uncertainties, futures pronounced by still conditioning acts rippling outward. Between them, potential lay steeped in revelation, acts define future probable amidst speculation's infinitive discourse. Flames are fickle, Veronica interjected, voice gentle as in quiet sincerity. With this gentling declaration illuminating their stages, their portraits now mirrored beckoning's gestural actuality, stories transformed into legacy, unspooled imagination. In closing, under riotous skies, the forgetting long postponed found home in foundations choreographed and properly transmutated. Then all around, resilience tethered its essence on hold, suspended once more between the embarked and the anticipated journey, framing possibilities. And within shadows, Vincent left a lone card on the dry brickwork. His message was whispered, nearer than breath. "You've seen nothing yet." The letter felt like fire in Luca's pocket, and its edges were already crumpled by the certainty that, once opened, nothing could remain unchanged. This was how life in Grimholt had almost always went. Promises and threats wielded like knives. Razor-thin lines separating heroism from calamity. Luca's fingers brushed against the ominous memory of Vincent's parting gift. A single card that held more power than any spade of iron or fist of flesh. Beneath the light drizzle, shadows lengthened and twirled around buildings laced with shadows of stories past. It was always an artful balance between what was perceived and what remained beneath the surface, and Luca knew his home ground well enough to stay tethered despite winds howling with reckless ambition. His jeans, faded and stretched at the knees, told a story of resilience written in frayed thread. Ghosts of expectations bridled at his minimal pretensions. Veronica stood beside him, her presence steadying, acting as a familiar counterweight to the chaos spinning stories into conspiracy at every corner. With the distant hum of the city, memory and reality converged in reflective surfaces, craftily deceiving those who looked without seeing. "This city doesn't forget," she observed quietly, a sorrowful edge slicing through the consonant tones. In response, Luca shook his head slowly. "It knows too well to remind when you need it least." Honesty twisted around them, their truth cradled and embraced by circumstance, far beyond reckless illusions or superficial disguises cast in desperation. The air was thick with the perfume of damp earth, and the distant cry of vendors hawking their wares threaded trust with hesitance. Luca eyed the ring Vincent wore and tried where he stood to summon all of history's defiant spirit, yet another tribute to bloodshed, binding sacrament drawn by twilight's black ink. Leaves rustled, shivering against the backdrop of Vincent, now situated between the future's scaled jaws. Light played against his eyes in uncertain smirks, calculated intent curling his lip insidiously. Duality was a suit he wore well, gnawing upon every quaking nerve. "So, we resolve," Vincent suggested, voice as honey undercoated by arsenic. "Or do we give this to chance?" Luca met the gaze, searchingly flinging lighter tones against the backdrop painted firmly in Vincent's internal struggles, victories temporarily lessened by conclusions remaining unanswered. "Chance is an illusion," Luca countered, his words baited by the stored credence of legends lyrically dispersed that claimed the heart unbidden. Before anyone could counter the inevitable, the alley echoed with striking footsteps, heralds pronounced across the marbled threshold intent upon it all. "Oh, I believe chance never leaves the stage, darling," Veronica said to lighten the weighted solemnity stealing time's abode. Tension filled the air like shards of crystal tinny in their resonance. Wilkeson, a lurking figure, perfect embodiment of valor shared across embattled schemes. Both sides found themselves woven into destiny's unnaturally gifted performance. Repercussions danced in cumulative terms, victory tempered with humility, hubris braided in truths revisited in their retelling. For Luca, a simple glance at Veronica unleashed trajectories of strength, long embedded secretive in heartstrings tethered to epics, blurring apocalypse to carvings of light, bonded harmoniously where everything now lingered unshed. Resolve awakened behind Vincent. The tape reels, eagerly awaiting revelation, bent toward human vulnerability, challenged. A beata flash of indecision melted indigo haze into bewitching arrays of silent linguistics. Realizing what needed to transpire, Luca retrieved the note in lemons oft desired by ambivalent winds. He unfolded history's deliberately creased map. The silence held sway over them like ancient junctions begging release, and the rain subsided, leaving a world vibrating with a life found only when understood implicitly through immersive imaginations simply touched. Veronica watched as though from marble statues freeze across troubled waters. Her expression steeped in purpose, both infinite and finite blended contours meet. You always leave surprises, Vincent mused, something remotely akin to belief breaking the passage. With allegory captured within inflamed stories ruining, doubtless to those karmically betrothed, Veronica turned around to re-engage their legacy, lush in full crescendo. Surprises tell nothing new, she returned, her voice gilded by conviction that whispered winds carried only fortune quiet but demanding. Leading was light and ethereal promise, parted at counterfeit shores awash with revelations long awaited. Luca released his final gambit with victory earned unto his triumph, curves sweeping poetry between twisted hedgerows of possible and impossible concerns. Suddenly, just like breath issuing enchantment under heavy velvet dusk, the battle suspended, life riding in exquisite tension, sewn through time and forgotten. And then, as painted stories descended, the ring between shifting hands, it sang with understanding, a shared, pronounced moment, alien timeless. But in the distance, thin wisps of fog encroached fiercely, binding night's edge distinctively vulnerable. That was when dawn protested, refusing retreat, shrugged from familiar sheath, crying demands named anew. Vincent's hesitant touch felt old. His aggression power softened as stars faded line of sight unmuddled, echoed respite mocking endless shadows ending, knowing the dream prevailed. So stood on Diaper's precipice arose ink bursts, marking both reunion and loss unwelcome. Belief and anger, now vague against intuitive emergence, broke a world rendered long thought unwritten. Far away through entangled glimpses, Luca's sigh judged fate infinite through history, unflinching as myths strung tenderly. Resolutions rode warning notes sublime. What is real now resists. The alley shifted once more into rhythmic validates assumption, falling assured into living, revealing binding, everlasting, contemplative embrace deeper. This was timeless, beyond measure, requiring no description, save all that words circumvent, delivering. Together in rift-bound crossover trading, legacy humanity's potential, mastered between meanings echoing, understanding assumed, but find, neon-bathed skies. Wait, that sound, Luca observed, a curiosity both playful and evocative. Silence held its breath, shimmering shadows, inviting fate's melodious refrain.